Let's get going.
Why the ring could be destroyed.
There's that character, something Kripke from Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
So that speech pattern that he has, or impediment, it's a real condition.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Bang Theory wiki, his name is Barry Kripke, PhD, is a Caltech plasma
What does he look like?
plasma physicist turned string theorist, and he's a convert of Leonard and Sheldon. He has a case of roticism or roticism.
That doesn't sound right. Eroticism?
No, like roticism. R-O-T-A-cism. Roticism.
Eroticism.
Case of roticism where he pronounces R and L as W, much like Elmer Fudd from Looney Tunes. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's based on something.
Yeah.
There's people with this.
What's funny is that I saw this. This came out like it's high school for me. There is this. I don't remember which site originally published this or where this was from originally, but it was going around the internet as a meme. It was all the Looney Tunes characters, and then all these like either psychiatric or criminal problems that they have.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
So,
yeah,
like they and some of it is not like PC by today. Like they said, Bugs Bunny is like a transsexual.
Oh really?
As well as like a.
I thought they said he was ADHD or something.
Yeah, because Bugs Bunny does a lot of cross-dressing.
Oh, okay. They also did that for Winnie the Pooh because they were like, so Eeyore is depressive, like he's like depressed. I think they said like Winnie, it was like an eating disorder or something.
10 Looney Tunes characters with mental disorders. God. Oh my god, just gonna be so terrible. Okay.
Who we got?
Bugs Bunny, borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, that's the one I saw.
Sylvester has bulimia. Oh my god. He terrorizes innocent Tweety Bird, and he mostly suffers. Oh my god. Wile E. Coyote, anorexia nervosa, Pepe Le Pew, hypersexuality. Yeah, I think that was pretty.
Yeah. Marvin
the Martian has delusional disorder. He is fucking delusional as all hell. Granny has Alzheimer's,
Jesus
dementia, and shows irritability and aggression.
Oh my god.
Porky Pig has obsessive compulsive disorder, obsession with repetitiveness and anxiety. Definitely. Daffy Duck has schizophrenia or paranoid personality disorder. Oh my god. Yosemite Sam, I mean, what, like psycho? What's he gonna be?
Antisocial personality disorder. Oh my god.
He's such an asshole.
He's terrible. Tasmanian devil. What doesn't he have?
Taz is generally a hyper... Okay, I'm going to read this one in full. Tasmanian devil. Taz is generally a hyperactive but complacent marsupial with a childlike excitement about things, especially food, but he transforms into a raving individual when ticked off, thus becoming Tasmanian devil, a destructive cyclone indicating his intermittent explosive disorder, complemented by his violent mood swings. His distractibility, confusion, and hyperactivity are symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Oh my god.
Besides unbounded craziness, he has delusions, general disorder of activity, which say... Oh, okay, they didn't edit this article in the 10 years that it's been out, which say that he has progressed to schizophrenia, causing deliriums and cognitive deficits.
Oh, geez. Is this written by a psychologist, or is it just like a...
I think that's funny. It has ADHD.
I mean, the hurricane sounds like a pretty good metaphor for ADHD.
I think the explosive disorder... Yeah, intermittent explosive disorder. Anyway, going back, so we were talking about soft versus hard magic systems.
Yeah.
And why the One Ring is probably a... So you're saying it's a soft... So my first take was it was probably a hard magic. Or at least that was a hard magic item, if not a system in itself within the universe of Lord of the Rings. And then you said it was a soft one because its power and influence applies differently to different people at different times. Therefore, it's kind of, like you said, the word spectrum. So magic that has a spectrum of variability in terms of origin, effects, who it influences, why it influences them, the degree, and all the rest, is soft magic. And then hard magic is definable, much like an actual law of physics, where it's consistent, and then there's ways you can learn it, harness it, and you don't necessarily have to have any inherent thing about you that draws you to it.
Well, yeah, that could be it. But I also, when I mentioned spectrum, I meant like there's a spectrum between hard and soft magic. So there is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think you could argue either way for the ring. That's I just see it as a soft, I guess. But yeah, I think the thing with hard magic system is that it's within reason that something can happen, and you kind of know that reason. So it doesn't necessarily have to be rational, but it has to be reasonable. So I guess you could argue with the ring that it affects Boromir more than Frodo because of personality. So that's it's a reason, right? It's a valid reason for why it affects them differently. But yeah, I mentioned that like it turns hobbits invisible when you put on the ring, but it doesn't turn Sauron invisible, and we don't really know why and what the purpose of invisibility is necessarily. Like, why did Sauron add that to the ring? Like, I don't think he would ever want to be invisible because he's all about big dick energy, basically. So it's like, that all kind of goes away when you're like sneaking around, you know? Like
that reminds me of when we were at Hanny and Nicole's watching, marathoning the trilogy, and
all the sexual imagery that we brought up with the two towers.
So yeah, so the tower itself is the phallus, and then the eye is like this vagina. So it's
fiery vagina.
It's this bizarre inversion of like the masculine and the feminine, and just how Sauron is kind of like this potentially a queen who's just misunderstood.
Yeah, basically.
Anyway, but that's because we're in a room full of LGBT plus people who are fantasy nerds and want to make everything make sense from their own experiences and point of view.
Yeah, and we're also mostly English majors, and then Kenny's like the one engineering kid, and you know how that goes.
English major. I was not an English major.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, humanities.
Yeah, that's why Hanny and I are the only ones there who have a sense of humor.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm lying. Are you kidding? No, it's...
You tell me to my face that watching Lord of the Rings, marathoning it with us, was not the funniest experience of Lord of the Rings that you've had.
It was definitely one of the most talkative.
It took us like 8 days to watch it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, obviously we had to space it out between weekends, but...
Yeah. And it comes back to people's background, and then their skills, and then... Just everyone is an individual, and what are we even talking about?
Everyone
anymore?
is an individual. Morgan Sutherland, 2019.
Wow. I mean, if I die and that quote is attributed to me, it's something I'm pleased with that.
You're good. Yeah.
I'm existentially quite pleased with that. Like if that was on my tombstone, or if there's a book that was written and I'm mentioned in it, and that's a quote to me. Great.
I'll personally see to it.
So, anyway, what was that other series that we were just watching here? What was it called?
The YouTube series?
No, the book. The guy. So, the YouTuber who the book he's reviewing. Okay, you're making faces at me now.
No, I was making fun of myself because I was like, I don't know, I'm all hyped up on coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I had my caffeine earlier today, so that's why I'm chilled
you're
out.
okay. So yeah, we talked about Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings.
Oh no, okay. Divergent.
Oh, that.
Okay.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
So here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
The main character is just an individual.
Yes.
But her not fitting in anywhere is because because you're an individual. Because
this is where your quote's coming from. Okay.
Who fits in? Yeah. I'm trying to tie it all together. Like, come on, give me a chance here. Who fits into any one category? Nobody does. Because you can be tall and also thin, or you can be tall and then like stocky, or you can be tall and overweight, or you can be tall and then black and overweight, or you can be short and black and thin.
Mm-hmm.
You can be Italian like me,
Mm-hmm.
or half Italian like me, or you can be full Italian like my mom's family,
Mm-hmm.
or you can be a nerd and you can also be kind of athletic like I am.
Yeah.
It's kind of both.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can be like you, where you're like a cute, dainty little thing, and you have this brain that, like, how could you possibly fit this much brain power into this little package? It's just hard, tough. There's the you at work, you at school, you with your family, you with your loved ones, you with your friends.
Yeah.
And then there's you as just you alone.
Yeah.
And
which one is you?
it's like all these are you.
Yeah.
They're all you, and people also put on certain masks deliberately, and then there's the fact that human beings, we are just deceptive because we're trying to survive, and the world is complicated, and we just don't want to die, and whatever the fuck else.
Because everybody lies.
Yeah, everybody lies.
It's a basic truth of the human condition that everybody lies. The only variable is about what.
Everybody does lie, even if they're not a liar, because, again, we all engage in deception.
Yeah.
If you think about it, putting on clothes is deception.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to hide parts of your body, and then you're trying to show, I'm this person in this situation.
Right.
It's kind of like, why do you wear a suit or formal business attire to a job interview?
Mm-hmm.
It's because that fits the context.
Yeah.
If you went to a fast food place with a suit on and just ate there, and that was like all you did all the time, it was kind of weird because this is totally not congruent to the space that you're in or the situation you're in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe there is a McDonald's where people
dress up, like in Sri Lanka, where it's like a dress up.
Holy shit! See what I mean?
Yeah, but they don't dress up in suits though.
See what I mean? Like nothing is consistent. So okay, I credit to the okay. I did not read this. We are just talking about Divergent. Because of we watched a YouTuber who was doing some silly ass critique about the movies and then I guess the books too.
Yeah.
I don't really know what he was focused more on, but
yeah.
I think it was more the movies because that's kind of what he was showing. But my impression is that it's trying to be. Well, okay, you were gonna probably say this. It's like a mix of 1984 meets Hunger Games meets Harry Potter meets, I don't know, trying to be modern and hipster and ironic. I don't know. I have no idea what the intention here was.
A bit more of like, oh, it's like for Twilight fans, but now we're like socially engaging in political critique kind of thing, like Hunger Games did after Twilight. I was just gonna say, if in case you haven't heard of Divergent or watched or read it, there's 5 factions and they're all related to one personality trait. And the main character is Divergent in that she can't fit into any of them or something. I've only read the first book, so I don't really know. It's supposed to be about genetics or something, like because the population's genetically defected that they all have one personality trait each, basically.
Just totally insane.
Doesn't make any sense. But yeah, anyway, like that.
It's completely implausible.
So like this whole idea of like you only have one trait that defines you. It sounds like the author read Harry Potter and like read about the the house system in Harry Potter and was like, oh, look, like this is like really cool and people really care about what house they're in and like people love aligning themselves to one personality trait in a house, but then totally didn't get what the whole house system was about in that it's not saying, look, this is who you are as an individual. It's about what do you value most? And that's a lot easier to deal with in terms of a story. You value something as opposed to like who you are, because you can't like place that down as you talked about with roles and stuff. And
it's weird.
Yeah, and like because that's the whole reason why Hermione isn't in Ravenclaw, is that she values friendship and bravery and all those things more.
And Harry's not a Slytherin because he values honor and integrity more than he does ambition or like seeking power. Right?
Yeah, and he stood up for himself in the Sorting Hat because he was like, I don't want to go there. So
Yeah, and he was just assertive. Yeah, so
Yeah,
starting
yeah.
as like, well, cool, thank you. What do you say, bud?
Sure. Yeah, that's like the whole point. And like, and I think like this is speaking to like the Harry Potter fan base in contemporaneous times, that people are so like, oh, but this person doesn't really fit into the, or like I was sorted into this thing, but I identify more with this, and it's like, it's like this faction thing, you know. You can't distill things down into one sort of house or one set of ideas. You might maybe aesthetically you dig the Slytherins because they're in the dungeon and they're like real creepy and like, you know, there's like damp shit everywhere. But then you're actually like Ravenclaw, but you're like, oh, but I'm not a nerd. It's cool. It's like a personality test where it tells you one thing and you're like, okay, I'm going to either take it or leave it. And you just kind of move on, you know?
Yeah. I think if anything can be learned from the last few years of politics in the Western world is that breaking everyone up into one side or the other is really not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Does not make sense, fails to capture nuance in a profound way, and ultimately is destructive and harmful. When I played Skyrim for the first time, so you go to Whiterun, which is the central city. So Skyrim is in a civil war, and they also have dragons. It's really a fucked up place if you think about it practically.
There's dragons.
So dragons are coming back.
Yeah.
That side of the story, the Civil War story was interesting, really good. So the western half of Skyrim is allegiant to the Empire, kind of the human empire of Cyrodiil, the other province. And then the western half is the Stormcloaks, who are like Nord nationalists, patriots, who think that Skyrim should be like for the Nords, and we are the ones who rule it.
Yeah.
So, and then they kick the Empire out, and then, you know, whatever. But then Whiterun is a neutral city, and they haven't decided, the Jarl there hasn't decided what side he wants to be on. And there's this stupid-ass character that you meet right when you first go in. And I don't remember his name, but he's a Nord, but he wears Imperial armor. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, he just looks like an Imperial soldier without the helmet and the sword. And it's hilarious. And so, go up to him, and then he looks at you, he goes, Greymane or Battleborn? And you go, and you can select, you know, how you want to respond to him, and and if you go, he goes, let's say it again, Greymane or Battleborn. And if you choose, and you can either choose one or the other, or you can just say, I'm not picking sides. And then if you choose, I'm not picking sides, he goes, sooner or later, we all pick a side.
Oh, God.
Because, so the Greymanes are this important family in that city that are like aligned with the Stormcloak rebels, and then his are the Battleborns, who are like these Imperial loving, you know, like we love the Empire, and the Empire is good for Skyrim and good for, you know. And it's kind of funny because inevitably, if you want to complete the Civil War storyline, you have to choose a side. And they're both not perfect. Right. Because the Stormcloaks are at worst racist, ultra-nationalist, these like crazy militant people. And then the Imperials are the big bad evil empire that are oppressing people and erasing culture and trying to take over and just make everything into like some boring commercialized pile of shit. I guess. I don't know. I mean,
they're trying to bring in like Starbucks and McDonald's into what's the world called? Is it Skyrim?
Tamriel is... Tamriel is the continent. Okay. Nirn is the planet. Skyrim is the province of Tamriel that you're in. Okay. So whatever. Yeah, but then there's... well, the Imperials are also... They're bringing civility, law and order. They have an established system of government that's stable. They bring trade. There's cultures that are mixing. People so society can grow if they're present. And then the good side of the Stormcloaks is they do have a legitimate claim to, you know, identity, and this is our land, and you know, those things matter, and we should have a say and rule our, you know, like we're the majority here. We should have, you know, the most power.
Right.
and or like our right to sovereignty is because this is our land and we are the people that are from here.
Right.
So both like it's like fuck man, like what do you believe? And so I've tried both, and I've really had so many times an ethical, or I guess I don't know, moral dilemma. Which side do I choose? Because if you play, and the thing too is it depends what character you play. Because if you play a Nord character and you really get into the role playing of it, and you might go, well, I'm a Nord, so I'll just join the Stormcloaks. Makes sense. But you're going to go, no. I don't like Ulfric Stormcloak. He's a douchebag who illegitimately went and murdered the High King of Skyrim. And so he's a bastard. You might go, no, he's the biggest hero ever.
Right.
Or you might be a fucking Khajiit and you're like, I don't care about anybody. I just want to join the Imperials because the Nords hate me.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Right.
And the game world tries to shape how you feel about these things because certain characters are hard done by either faction, and certain characters benefit from either faction. It just goes to show, like, factionalism is really stupid.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the context of a civil war in a video game, you do have to pick one side or the other.
Yeah.
And in real life, civil wars are very messy. There's not the good guy and the bad guy. I mean, I'm not going to talk about real world examples, but there's some that have even been that are currently ongoing, or even within the 20th century, the last 100 years, that have happened where there was not a good or a bad guy. It was just, okay, there's a shitty party and there's an even shittier one, or there's a faction that would be good for this country, maybe, but they also have a lot of problems, and they will cause problems if they are the ones who win, or
right.
I don't know, right? And also there's the fact that in many cases the history's already been done, and the side that won is the side that won, plain and simple, and that's who we believe is, it's kind of like, okay, because we didn't have a civil war in Canada. In the U.S., imagine if the British won. Like, how different would America be if the British suppressed the 13 colonies' attempts to rebel and break free? Like, would it even be the same society it is today? Who's to say?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or if the French won instead of the British here.
What if Napoleon won Waterloo?
Right.
Would the world be a better place? Because of the history of colonization, and it's like, well, no, the English won. Napoleon was exiled. The Empire of France basically collapsed. The Brits kind of cemented their, dominance on the world stage, I guess you could say. So yeah. Wow, that was kind of a lot. So hard magic systems, the soft magic systems, and Divergent.
And factions.
So what was I blabbed at length here. Wow, 25 minutes of footage. Not footage, audio. We're not recording anything. My brain's fucking failing.
We are recording something.
We're not recording a video.
We're not videotaping.
See, there's so... Precision in language is very important. I come from a workplace.
Yes, you were born at an insurance company.
Yes, and I am, in 2 days of recording this, I'm also leaving. But anyway, miscommunication is constant. People use the wrong tense. They use the wrong sentence structure. They put commas where they're not supposed to be, or they don't use them at all. They don't put periods sometimes. Sometimes they write emails in all capitals, and then I have to explain to them how that's really not professional, and makes it seem like you're screaming at people when you write an email. And so communication is... What are we trying to do?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to title this one Rambling.
Yeah, just Rambles.
Maybe we'll make a little series. So
Rambles, yeah.
High Fantasy Rambles.
There we go. Yeah, that makes
or something,
sense.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So really what we're saying is hard magic systems
Yes.
and soft magic systems have a spectrum. So it's not really one category or the other.
like in Harry Potter, you could argue that the magic system is hard or soft again, because it's soft because we don't really know how people power magic in Harry Potter. Like, obviously, you cast a spell and you say some words, so that's the hard magic part of it. But it's like, where does this magic come from? Like, blah, blah, blah. But then you can also, like, cast nonverbal spells without saying words, so it's like the magic is not connected to the words. It's connected to your intention, I guess. And something. You don't really learn how this actually happens. And, you know, why certain people can have magical abilities. Like, is it genetic? Blah, blah, blah. So those things aren't really explained, and that's why it's a soft magic system. But it has elements of hard magic. I could also be totally wrong about this. I didn't Google anything about hard magic systems before we started. I just watched one video about it, and I'm like, oh, this is what I think this means. So
I think the review that we watched of Divergent was kind of funny. And, again, I haven't read it. I didn't even hear about it until today. But when I saw the little clips that he was doing, and I saw the cover art, and I saw the way he was describing it, and I go, this is an attempt to copy the Hunger Games, or just build off of that momentum, right? Like, okay, so you bought me Bernard Cornwell's The Last Kingdom.
Yeah.
Great novel so far. And then the edition I have, there's a quote on the front cover which says, like Game of Thrones, but real. And I go, it's kind of a backhanded compliment, right? Because it's saying that it's comparable to Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Except that this one is like the real deal.
It's a backhanded compliment to Game of Thrones, because it's like,
no,
this is better.
No, I think,
really?
No, I think the last. I think the Last Kingdom too, because they had to put it on the front cover to convince people that, hey, you're on this momentum of being high on Game of Thrones energy, so why don't you watch this? This is a more we have real history, or we have real historical figures and characters, and even some events are referenced here.
How did this connect to Divergent? Trying to attract people, because you were saying Divergent looks like Catching Fire.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so obviously like a ripoff of the cover art. Like,
because there's like a fireball in the middle or whatever.
Yeah, and just the use of how it's lighting, and you know, they show us there's a city, and it's a post, it's totalitarian controlled society, and I don't know. I usually find futuristic fantasy not that cool because, not usually, excuse me. I sometimes find futuristic fantasies like this are ones where it incorporates eugenics or totalitarianism, or there's just like oppression, or there's technology's gone haywire, or AI controls everything. It's like I'm not pulled to read or to engage with that much, because it's really speculative, and it doesn't. It's kind of like
it's like a what if kind of thing.
Yeah, but they're not doing it in a way that high fantasy or even low fantasy does. Most of them do, where I've said that fantasy is like a simulation. It's kind of what it is like. It's like, what would society be like if we had, a separate species that all it does is just terrorize us all the time? But I think there's more historical grounding for wanting to ask that question in the first place.
Right.
Whereas us going, well, what's society going to be like in the future? Are we going to be categorized according to personality traits? And I go, well, but we don't do that now. We've never done that before.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess I guess it's like you said, it's speculative fiction. So I guess that's kind of cool. But I don't know, man.
I was mentioning this too because, like the Divergent series in particular, I think why that faction thing fails is that it sets into the future this sort of idea of like the caste system, or you mentioned like medieval society roles of like the royalty and then the clergy and
so before we recorded this, Shalini and I were talking about real world examples of caste systems and how they're based on professions. Like in India, the caste system there is like you're a priest, or you're a soldier, you're a merchant, you're whatever. It's all hereditary as well, so arguably so arguably there is a sort of genetic component to it, I guess.
Yeah,
but
it's not by your personality. You can't choose, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm more fiscally responsible, so I'll go be a merchant. Like, that wasn't how it operated. And in Divergent, you can do that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, that no.
And this is also a very post-modern, I don't know, maybe. No, well, okay.
I think it's a bit too, like, entertainment.
Post-truth era type. I don't know. I hate using that phrase.
No,
too.
it was before post-truth. This is like
Yeah.
2008.
And post-truth is bullshit. That's not how order and chaos. I don't want to get.
Yeah,
I don't even want to go into that. Okay. Caste systems. Yeah. So it's based on professions, not personality. So there's a genetic component to it. There is some heredity. Okay. Yeah. And this is the thing that I think I could be just assuming this about Divergent in terms of how modern it is or contemporary it is the character in the society, the main character, is choosing which faction to go into actively.
Yeah. Well,
so,
they all do.
Yeah, but it's just like, so if you can make a choice, then it confirms that you're an individual who has free will.
Or, I think they do, like, some test, actually. They do a test where they run simulations and they figure out, like, how you react to those situations. They assess which faction you fit into. And then that's how you go into... But then...
how does
and then there's that scene where she pours the blood into one of the...
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what I mean. So she does ultimately make a choice.
Yeah.
Maybe they help you narrow it down, and then you...
Yeah, which one you're more compatible with.
So it still invalidates, to me, the whole project of it, because it implies that people are malleable and, again,
they can
mortals that have free will and choose to do shit.
Yeah. As opposed to, like, caste systems in, like, British or English medieval society where it wasn't like that at all. Like, you were in the great chain of being where God is at the top and you have to stay. If you're a shoemaker, your child's going to be a shoemaker. Like, there's no other divergence from that.
And it's funny because even that in practice is bullshit.
Right, yeah, of course. Like, that's why, the Enlightenment and all that kind of shit happened. Like, Romantic era and all that kind of stuff is kind of like rebelling against that. But like what I was trying to say, and you were like contextualizing the point for me, was that Divergent seemed to be bringing these caste tropes, like examples of factions in history, into a futuristic setting, and it was like trying to point out, like, oh, we're always gonna resort to categorizing people to order society even in the future, and it's not going to make sense. But it's like that's not an accurate representation of how it's happened in history, and it definitely can't stand on its own like this in the future, because as the video we watched was like talking about, like, there's roles that are unfulfilled in society because, like, you can't just have 5 different types of people in a society. Like, that's insane. Books that are just about entertainment value and, like, trying to show, like, this badass girl who has, like, a love interest and is, like, overthrowing the government, like, that you can't really analyze the world building, and if that's, like, the main mission of that book, you can't analyze the world building and expect it to be, like, solid, I
mean, you can even argue J.K. Rowling's world building is lazy just because it's set in the real world and there's just this magic castle that you somehow get transported to through these interdimensional portals, and the castle is somehow located in Scotland, but no one can see it.
Yeah.
And then there's all these thousands of fucking people going to school there and working there.
Yeah.
And then there's this entire, underground society. Well, it's not it's physically underground, no, but
yeah, technically invisible.
So you can argue that she was lazy with that, and it's like, well, yeah, it's not the point. It's not I mean, hers is very around the character, and this is the thing, right? I actually thought about this earlier today. There's that quote from the Quran where they say, like, if you kill one person, it's as if you kill all of humanity. It's because every person is really like a little ball of everything that is what human life.
Wow.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of, if you think about it like hard enough, it is true. And that's kind of what Harry is. Harry is a character who goes through the world. Like, he experiences the world in the sense that he experiences all of the range of life, really, where he experiences temptation. He experiences betrayal. He betrays people. He has his reputation destroyed. He's an outcast. He's also a hero. He's all these different things at different points.
Yeah.
And then he experiences all the emotions and the grief and you know, he's a wizard. He has quite a bit of talent as it, but he's not the best. And he can then relate to people that are horrible at magic, like Ron or Seamus. Ron's not that bad, but you know, and then there's Hermione's, and then Lord Voldemort's, and or Albus Dumbledore's, who are just crazy, brilliant magicians or witches and wizards. So I think that's what I mean. Like, he's this character that represents the whole thing of what she's trying to talk about.
Right.
In a way, and then but he's just one boy, right?
Yeah.
The boy who lived.
Well,
So. I mean, her fucking first chapter is called "The Boy Who Lived," right?
Yeah, it's about him.
I mean, when someone dies, what can you honestly say about them? Like when people eulogize, people always say, "Oh, that eulogy was so beautiful," and then there's people who say, "Well, it didn't capture everything of it." You know, they missed out all these traits about that person, or they didn't say about this funny time that they made this great meal, or they screwed up something, or whatever. It's like, the only thing you can agree on is, yeah, that person lived. That's all.
Wow.
I mean, can you say, you know, like, if I die, people might say, you know, Morgan was definitely white. I mean,
left? You were breathing at some point in time.
I was here.
Yeah. Wow. That's, like, strangely melancholic.
Yeah.
Well, that's the great tension of books is... And it really depends on, like, what comes first. Is it the story or the world that comes to you first? And there's always this great tension of, if it's a character-led story, if it's a story about a person, then the world might not be as expansive as you, like, would consider our world to be. But then if it's based on a world, like for Tolkien, he had a language and then he wanted to construct a story for it, right? So he started with the world building aspect rather than like the story of the ring. And that was kind of concocted for all of this stuff to occur, right? If it's for world building that you're writing, then maybe your character story might not be as robust as if you had started with the story instead. And obviously there's like ways that you can go around this. If you really want to write a character-driven story after coming up with the world, then obviously you can do that. But
interesting.
That's yeah. It's like almost as if there's again a spectrum of, is the world your character or is the character your world? So is it more like we're following Harry and he's the kind of world in himself because we're trying to like explore who Harry is through all these books and how he comes to defeat the bad guy at the end? Or are we kind of exploring the world of Middle Earth through Frodo's eyes, and the world itself is an obstacle course, and it has its own characteristics and histories that are almost as important as the story of the ring itself.
Whoa, holy.
So when we say everyone is an individual, we're really saying, are you the world or is the world you? Mic drop.
Well, I mean, on that note, bye.
That's it. We solved everything. Let's get out of here. No, kidding. Yeah.
No, I wasn't kidding.
Oh, you're done? You're out of steam?
What else do you want to say?
I don't know.
Okay,
Well,
we're
I
done.
feel like.
We're gonna save that for Ramblings episode 2.
Okay, sounds good.
Ciao!